I'm Stu Schneller, and I'm Dean of the College of Sciences and Mathematics. And I would like to welcome you on behalf of the faculty. Can't hear in the back, is that correct? I see people waving. Either they can't hear or they're friendly. If you can't hear, can you hear me now? Be good for a telephone ad, wouldn't it? Can you hear me now? Okay, I'm Stu Schneller. Oh, yeah. And I'm Dean of the College of Sciences and Mathematics. And on behalf of the faculty and staff of the College of Sciences and Mathematics, I'd like to welcome you to the 15th Annual Honors Convocation. And this convocation is being sent over the internet with live streaming. And so perhaps there are people who were unable to be here to share in this special day for us who can see it through the 21st century technology. I would like to ask that you turn off your cell phones or turn them off into any audible mode while we go through this ceremony. I'd also like to recognize before we go, this is one of the 2 weekends every year that the COSAM Leadership Council is on our campus. And these are alumni who come back to learn about the college and go out to be our ambassadors. They also provide the resources for us to do many of the things we do, such as this event today. So I would like for those members who are scattered throughout here who are on COSAM's Leadership Council to stand so that we can acknowledge you before we begin. So please stand if you're a member of the Leadership Council. Traditionally, the convocation not only recognizes students, but also recognizes a former or soon-to-be former COSAM faculty member who had a major influence on students. Those recognized are nominated by former students. This year's honoree is Dr. Jim Bradley, professor of the Department of Biological Sciences. Dr. Bradley, please come forward. Jim, I'm calling on you, buddy. I mentioned to you that Dr. Bradley is a professor in the Department of Biological Sciences. He received his bachelor's degree at the University of Wisconsin. Come on up here, Jim, so we can see you. And his PhD at the University of Washington. After serving as a postdoc at the University of Washington, he came to Auburn University in 1976 and has been here since that time. Now keep in mind that the people who are recognized, the faculty honoree at these, are nominated by former students. Dr. Bradley has a number of awards to his credit. He served as the chair of the University Senate, and I must tell you what that means. That means Dr. Bradley was elected by his faculty peers to represent them on the president's staff as well as to lead the university council. He received the university's Academic Freedom Award, and he's also a trustee for the Revolutionary Scholars Foundation. Jim's research has been in crickets, and you might find that unusual, but the study of crickets has been a very valuable process or experience in his specialty area of cell biology. In 2000, Dr. Bradley received the COSAM Outstanding Teacher Award, and in 1999 and 2000, he was also recognized by the Alumni Association for their Outstanding Teaching Award. I think what sets Dr. Bradley apart from a more traditional faculty member is his role in interdisciplinary studies. We are a university, and so often we come to a university as a student focused on a particular area to study. And we don't leave with exposure to what else is around us. Dr. Bradley has been a champion for that on our campus. and is well appreciated for that. In the early 1970s, give you a little bit of background, Auburn University developed an undergraduate two-course sequence at that time called The Ascent of Man. That continues today as the Human Odyssey. And Dr. Bradley led the Human Odyssey program from 1994 to 2007. I think I should mention that in that process, Dr. Bradley was a unique individual whose energy and expertise in interdisciplinary studies for over 2 decades influenced dozens of faculty colleagues and hundreds of students across the university community. In this nomination letter, or nomination letters that we received, student after student talked about first his cell biology, but second about how he opened their eyes to the world around them. And I think that was probably the strength with which Dr. Bradley was chosen. So Jim, I'm certainly pleased to honor you with this as the faculty honoree for this year's COSAM Honors Convocation. I have a plaque for you that reads, College of Sciences and Mathematics of Auburn University dedicates its Leadership Council annual honors convocation to Dr. James Bradley to honor his years of unselfish service to the students of Auburn University, given this 16th day of April 2010. So Jim, you have certainly mentored us all and have left a mark on many of us, and for that we're most grateful. So thank you very much.
I'd just like to say a couple of things. There's no higher honor that I can imagine than an award or an honor given by students. And I just wanted to say to all the students here and the students' parents that the greatest joy I've had really and sincerely at Auburn University is working with the students here. And you're the lifeblood of the university, but not only that, you're the hope and the future of the planet and the species. And if the students at Auburn University that I've had the pleasure to work with are any indication of what our future is going to be like, I'm very optimistic. So I just thank all these students for the chance to be with you. I've learned as much from you as I hope some of you have learned from me, but I've learned a lot from you. So thank you very much for this award.
Okay, thank you, Jim. Get my notes in order here. I guess while I'm doing that, I could ask the Dean's Medalists and their presenters and the 4.0 seniors to come sit in the chairs up front. And that's up this way. So if you can do that now, then we can move along once we get to your recognition. This is the Dean's Medalists and their presenters and the 4.0 seniors. All right, the Dean's Medalists is the first group we will recognize. These are the outstanding seniors in each department. And let me explain to you, as you look at department, you may see more than one student, for example, associated with biological sciences, and more than one student associated with biomedical sciences. These are given based on the proportion of the number of students in each of those majors. So you can see that the larger number of majors in biological sciences, for example, leads to more Dean's Medalists. But these are our outstanding seniors. GPA, extracurricular activity, university citizenship, community service citizenship, all those play into recognition of these outstanding seniors. Their pictures, their photographs, which you see over here, will be displayed in the foyer of the Student Services area of COSAM, which is in the Sciences Center classroom building for a year. And those serve as inspiration. They serve as inspiration for the students who follow this group, but they serve as daily inspirations for us who have the privilege of working with these young people. We see those pictures every day, and we're reminded of what these students have accomplished and what we still need to do and be challenged to do. They will each receive a book. Math medalist receives proofs from the book, and everyone else receives Scientific American Inventions and Discoveries. They also receive a plaque and one of these photographs as well. So I will call a faculty member up from the department, and I'll ask them to introduce their dean's medalists. And I'd first like to call on Dr. Craig Geyer. Craig is a professor in the Department of Biological Sciences.
So it's a pleasure to describe to you Michael Alcorn's work and to honor him, but obviously he's not coming up here with me because he's off in the hinterland somewhere, I believe, researching universities for his next step. But Michael came to my office looking for research experience, and I put him in contact with Jennifer Deitloff, a postdoc in my lab, and Sean Graham, a PhD student in my lab. The four of us designed a project that had him go into the field looking at the evolutionary ecology of a couple of very closely related salamanders that live in streams around the Birmingham area. My major challenge to Michael was to tell him that I was going to toss him into my graduate student lab and expect him to survive. And not only did he do that, but he thrived in that environment. And the reason it's a challenge is because in that environment, it's different from undergrads where you're just presented information and expected to give it back. At the graduate student level, you're expected to be challenged and to respond to those challenges, both academically and in the social environment that you find yourself in field work, where people are ribbing you constantly, and so you'd better be able to give as well as you can take. And I can guarantee you that Michael excelled at all of those things. So it's a pleasure to describe his work. It's a pleasure to honor him and to accept the gifts that the college is bestowing upon him and to make sure that he gets those. And I can guarantee you that you'll hear from him because he's going to end up at a very prestigious place based on the places he chose to apply for his next step. So let's give Michael a hand even though he's not here.
Dr. Catherine McVeigh, Biological Sciences, will present the next award.
So I get a bit nervous, and knowing about that streaming video stuff is not helping any. So it's a great pleasure for me to participate in recognizing Melissa Joseph as a Dean's Medalist. Oops, sorry. I need a keeper. Okay. Melissa grew up in the Birmingham area, and before enrolling at Auburn, graduated with honors from Hoover High School. I've known Melissa for a little over a year, and despite knowing her for such a short time, and mainly in the context of the classroom, I can't imagine liking Melissa more or admiring her more. I first came to know Melissa in the spring of 2009 when she was a student in a very large microbiology class, a very intimidating class. Melissa distinguished herself among 250 students, but not only consistently scoring among the highest grades in the class, but attending class regularly. I soon made the connection with her name and her face and knew that I could rely on her presence and her smiling face in the classroom. Last summer, Melissa was part of another class, a much smaller class, cell biology, just 60 students. I remember looking for her during that first roll call and was very relieved to find her sitting in the upper tier with her smile and her presence. As the semester went on, once again, I found I could rely and count on Melissa's presence in the lecture hall, and not just in body. Oftentimes, I would look up and catch Melissa's eyes with sort of an intense attention, it's hard to say, which said to me that she was not there just in body, but she found the lecture material interesting, no, and she was engaged. And during that semester, Melissa distinguished herself once again as achieving the highest scores in the class, over 100. She gave me a permission to say that. I thought more than once over this past year that her excellent grades and her performance in class must come naturally to her. In and out of class, she has this calm, and I accuse her of being inscrutable, and quiet confidence. So who is Melissa Joseph? So as my grandmother used to say, Melissa Joseph does not toot her own horn. She would rather rely on her record and let that speak for her. So I'll share some of that with you now. Melissa's performance in the classes that she had with me mirrors her overall scholastic performance, a near-perfect 4.0. And when I asked her recently what her formula of success was, she quickly answered that she never left the course material in the classroom, indicating to me that she acquainted herself with the lecture material before class, and she revisited it soon after class. And through hard work and discipline, she has translated her intellectual gifts into academic success. Like a true Auburn student, I think Melissa believes in hard work and is disciplined and dedicated to the task at hand. As if maintaining academic excellence and a rigorous curriculum were not enough, Melissa has given of her time and service to the university and wider community. She has served as an Auburn University mentor, mentoring freshmen since 2006. She has been a supplemental instructor for the principles of biochemistry, sharing her aptitude for biology with those who might be struggling. She's been a longtime volunteer with the Lee County Humane Society and volunteer with Storybook Farms. In short, Melissa has the credentials that you might expect of a Dean's Medalist. When I first talked with Melissa about a year ago, she told me that she was interested in pursuing a career in veterinary medicine, and we have to congratulate her. Melissa has been accepted in 2 fine schools of veterinary medicine, Auburn University and Mississippi State. She's going to realize her dream of going to vet school. So Melissa, while I'm deeply honored to be included in your celebration today of your award and your outstanding achievements, I am even more grateful that you've been in my classroom, so thanks. Melissa's parents are here today and her fiance, and to celebrate with us. So please know that Melissa is a wonderful role model and an inspiration not only to her classmates and to us all. I often wish that when I grew up, I could be like Melissa. So I ask you to join her parents and her family, her loved ones, and me in congratulating Melissa as a recipient of the Dean's Medal.
I should have mentioned that we ask faculty to present these awards so that you who are attending perhaps can see the faculty members that your student has talked about. And I think that gives another way for you to connect with us. Jim Barberie will present the next Dean's Medalist in Biological Sciences. Jim.
Well, it's a pleasure to be up here today to be sort of representing Justin. I have a lot of admiration for Justin, and I will say this, that there are special students that come along and you kind of categorize them and you put them in the back of your mind. You never forget them, and I think Justin's one of those. Justin came to me about a year ago, and he said, I'd like to do an undergraduate research project with you. And so I said, okay. I gave him the standard questions. I said, what's your grade point average? And he said 4.0, and of course I said, this looks good. And so I talked to him a little while, and I said, well, why don't we try it? And so then I had the task of trying to figure out what I thought that Justin could accomplish in the laboratory. And after talking to him and looking at his work habits, and one thing I would say about Justin, he is focused, and I think that's a very important characteristic for students nowadays, or even professors, is to be focused on what you're doing so that you can give your full attention. So we talked, and I said, okay, Justin, I would like to give you a project, and you're going to have to do this independently. I'm not going to be looking over your shoulder, but I'll put you in my lab, and I want you to do something that hasn't ever been done. I would like for you to isolate some types of viruses that have receptors for Legionella, one of the causes of Legionnaire's disease. And he said, okay, fine with me. So I said, good. And then towards the end of the semester, research wasn't going as good in terms of getting a lot of good results at that point. And I had to sort of pump him up and say, you know, you just have to redo these things, and you have to pay attention to what you're doing. And so then we got into this semester, and he has his honors thesis, and he had performed 2/3 of the research, and he was lacking a component of getting some good positive results at the end, because it would have been hard to write a thesis without some kind of a good ending to it. So about 3 weeks ago, Justin repeated some experiments and came to me, and he said, well, he came more recently, came back and showed me the data and said, I've got some good results. And lo and behold, he has isolated some of what we call clones that have receptors for Legionella. And so I think one of the main things about Justin is you can't do any better on the grade point average when it's 4.0. You have to have good work habits. His work habits are extremely good. You have to be persistent. I think he learned to be a little more patient than he was before he came in the lab. He was getting a little antsy about the results and so forth. And so Justin has turned out to be one of these students who will succeed. And I'm sure whatever his future endeavors turn out to be in the end, I don't know if it's going to be medical school or graduate school, exactly what. His father's a dentist. He may wind up to be a dentist. I don't know. But whatever it is, I'm sure he's going to do an excellent job. I'm sure there will be a place in my heart for what I have learned from him as I learned from all the students who come to my lab. And I appreciate him coming to the lab and working with me, and I applaud you, Justin, for your achievements.
Congratulations. I'll bring Dr. Larry Witt to the podium. Dr. Witt is Associate Dean for Academic Affairs in COSAM, and he's also a professor in biological sciences who will present the next two, both in biomedical sciences.
Jordan, come up here. I'd like to present Jordan Anderson to you. I intended to talk a little bit about the person who is truly the scholar athlete. A lot of that's in the program, and you know that Jordan is an All-American swimmer, was captain of the swim team, and many of you also know that among his many other academic accolades, he was recently named the McWhorter Award, which is the outstanding male athlete in the Southeastern Conference, and then also was recently named a Rhodes Scholar, the first in Auburn in the last 30 years. So I had a bunch of details about that, and as I was walking over here from my office, I thought, you know, I just want to tell you two things that I think captured Jordan, two things that really happened since he got the Rhodes Scholarship. One, in fact, happened earlier today. I was at a table eating lunch with Jordan. There were several other people there, some physicians and other folks. We were sitting there talking, and we started talking about books we had read recently. And, you know, I had read one that's pretty new, and I was like, I was going to tell about that. And it was quickly apparent that no matter what book anybody talked about, Jordan had read it and remembered an incredible amount of detail about it. And someone couldn't think of the name of it, and Jordan, I know that. And it's just incredible that he spent so much time in athletics and in his studies and still has the capacity to do that. And I was just impressed by the breadth of his knowledge. The other happened a few weeks ago. We were at the president's house, and they were celebrating Jordan's winning the Rhodes Scholarship. And there were several people that were there, really people that he had invited that had influenced him along the way. And after a time, the president stood and asked if Jordan wanted to make a few remarks. And he said he did. It was incredible. Jordan went around and talked about each person that was in that room and talked humbly and talked sensitively about how that particular person had impacted him so much. And it was so characteristic of his demeanor. In fact, he had turned the evening, an evening that was supposed to be all about him, into an evening that was all about someone else. And so I think that, his athletic prowess, his academic successes speak for themselves. But I think the greatest gift that he has is just being the person that Jordan is. So Jordan, it gives me great pleasure to give you the Dean's Medal in Biomedical Sciences. Katie. Well, I'm pleased to present Katie Murphy. Katie comes from Coleman, Alabama, and she's, you can see in your program, a biomedical sciences major in pre-med. I never know in these things where we're supposed to tell people's GPA or not tell it, but I'll tell you that Katie's GPA is an integer between 3 and 5. And so if you can figure it out, it doesn't get any better than that. She's won a number of academic awards. One of the things that I was impressed in when I was looking at her resume was the number of service activities that she's been involved in. She worked one summer with a group called World Changers. And there she worked in Pensacola, Florida. And she spent the whole summer involved in building wheelchair ramps for people that couldn't afford it. And y'all are close enough to living in Pensacola, Florida, knowing how fun it must be to work outside all day long building wheelchair ramps. And I'm sure she helped in the carpentry, but she was also sort of the medic. And she said that she removed a lot of splinters during that summer. She also worked for an organization called the Good Samaritan Health Clinic. This is an indigent health clinic in the Coleman area. One summer she went to Gallup, New Mexico, where she worked on a Navajo reservation. Been very involved in tiger habitat, which is sort of the Auburn's local chapter of Habitat for Humanity. Been involved in an AWIS, which is an Association for Women in Sciences. With Katie's ability and her credentials, you know, I'm sure she'll be very, very successful in medical school. I'm sure she'll be very successful in a residency, and I'm sure she has a choice of any residency, just about whatever she wanted to do. She clearly has that ability. The truth is though, what she wants to do is that she's now in a program called the Rural Medicine Program, and it's a program, sort of a transition year between college and medical school, for those people who their desire is to go back to some small community in Alabama and become a family doc and give of themselves to some small community that desperately needs medical care. That's the kind of person Katie is. And so again, Katie, it's my great pleasure to present to you the Dean's Medal in Biomedical Sciences.
Congratulations. The next award, Dean's Medalist, Chemistry and Biochemistry, Dr. Annie Gordon will come forward. Annie's also a new mom.
So it's my pleasure today to present the Dean's Medal in Chemistry and Biochemistry to Jonah Vilcek. And they told me I only had 3 minutes, so I can't tell you all the wonderful things about Jonah in just 3 minutes. So I want to just tell you about how I met Jonah. Jonah was actually one of the first students I had in the first class I taught here at Auburn. And he sent me an email because he couldn't come to office hours. And it was, it was really quite funny because I never met him the whole semester. It was a big class. There were 200 people in the class, and we were pen pals all semester, where he would write me these notes late at night, and I would answer them at midnight. And they would be very detailed, right? They'd be like, on page 214 in the figure in the caption, you know, it says that you should do this, this, and this. And I was wondering about this exception that they don't mention. And I would answer the question, and I would say, like, well, you know, that's very interesting that you pointed that out, that yes, we've left this piece out, and blah, 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 blah. And normally we teach that in the physical organic class for graduate students. We leave that out for the sophomores because it confuses them. And so all through the semester, we had this exchange going on. And for you younger students, if you can't go to office hours, I highly recommend that email is a very useful tool. And at the end of the semester, I was like, I gotta find out who this kid is. You know, it's been, you know, all semester, we've been pen pals. I've been reading his exams. He not only would have one of the best exams in the class, he would have notes in the margins that would say, like, well, you could have put this answer, but that would be incorrect because. Okay? So anyway, so it comes time to turn in the finals, and I'm watching people turn in their exams, and I have my students bring me their exams and bring a student ID. They have to have an ID to turn in their exam for the final. And so I got his exam, and I was like, wait, come back. Maybe you'd want to do undergraduate research with me sometime? And he was like, oh, I'll think about it. And he left. So then, like 2 or 3 days later, he comes to my office, and he's like, oh, I finished my exams. I've thought about it now, and I thought about what you said about undergraduate research. And you know, I think that would be a really good idea, because I think I want to be a chemist. And I was like, oh, cool. So he was my first undergraduate student out of my first class with my first graduate student in the lab where we were just building things. And so for our first project, we were going to make uranium triiodide, which is a chemistry joke, so nobody gets it. But we didn't tell him we'd never done it before, and it was kind of scary. But this is just the kind of person that Jonah was, where he was really excited about learning and not just doing what he had to do to get things done, but doing everything completely and doing the best job that he could. And so he stayed with my lab for a year. He was an undergraduate research fellow. We used our undergraduate research fellow money to go to an American Chemical Society meeting where he presented with a whole lot of other graduate students to undergraduate students and did very admirably. He's been a leader in his church as well. He's been a supplemental instructor and helped other students. He's been a teaching assistant for chemistry and just done a really outstanding job. He took, now that was my first year, my first time teaching that he was in my sophomore class. He took some time off from Auburn to go on a mission to Utah because this is something that was very important to him. And so now he's back this year, and we were, you know, writing him letters while he was coming back and trying to set up, well, how can we do this? And do you still want to do research? And are you still interested in chemistry? And he told me he didn't want to do research with me anymore. But he's been doing research this semester in computational chemistry and trying to get an idea about different kinds of chemistry and what he wants to do. And he wants to go to graduate school in chemistry, but it's hard to pin down just what he's good at because Jonah's one of those students that's good at lots of different things. And so you have a really hard time of picking out just where you want to find your heart. And so that's where he is now. And I guess, is your wife here? Your wife? So, and his beautiful wife, he married when he got back from Utah. And so I am just pleased as punch to be giving you the Dean's Medal. And congratulations.
Congratulations. I'd like to ask Dr. Ron Lewis, come forward, a professor in geology and geography.
As a paleontologist, one of my jobs is to identify things that local people have found in the community. This is kind of a fun part of the job because you never know what you're going to get. I don't mean to make fun of anybody, but people who haven't studied the fossilization process and realize that soft tissue doesn't usually get preserved, well, when they call you up and say they found a fossil potato, it's probably not a fossil potato. You know, a big dinosaur egg that somebody had found in the local community turns out to be a spheroidal boulder of granite. But that's one end of the spectrum. On the other end of the spectrum was a young gentleman who was a freshman that year and had collected some fossils and wanted me to identify them. And when he came to my office, he'd been to Harrell Station, which is a place in central Alabama, and he'd been there with the Alabama Paleontological Society. He had done a good collection. He had prepared them very well, and they were housed in a plastic container with partitions and type labels, and as far as I could tell, they were all correct. So there wasn't much of anything I could do to help this gentleman. It turned out to be my introduction to Josh Lively. The next semester, Josh was in my class in historical geology, and for the first 2 or 3 exams, he didn't miss a question. I could have used his paper as a key. And these qualities that he showed then have proven to be consistent throughout his graduate, or rather his undergraduate work in the department, not only in paleontology, but in also his other classes, as his GPA within the department of 4.0 attests to. So the faculty, including not those in disciplines much different from his love of paleontology, such as geophysics, have agreed that he is our top candidate this year. In terms of his academic honors and awards, there are many. Honor Society, Pi Kappa Phi, rather. He's in the Auburn University Honors College, and he's finishing his honors thesis. He won a university undergraduate research fellowship, and at the same time, he has exhibited social and leadership skills in the department. He's active in our local organization of Society of Economic Paleontologists and Mineralogists, or rather the SGE, which is the local chapter of fraternity, and Association of American Paleontological, AAPG organization. He is the chair of that. He is also active professionally in many organizations. Let me tell you a little bit about his research that he's doing for his honors thesis and for his, funded by his university fellowship. Although his interest is in vertebrate paleontology, dinosaurs and such, he's been working with me on a collection of mollusks that are in Montgomery, exposed. These are semi-buried in the seafloor today. They're called pen shells. So they live partly buried in the seafloor, partly exposed, particularly in grass bed communities. And we found these in an outcrop in Montgomery in the Upper Cretaceous. And what Josh has done, it's very laborious work, because when I first found these, I started chipping them out and collecting them, more or less like an amateur paleontologist. But Josh got involved, and we decided that it would be much better to map them in place. So this involves laying out a grid, a meter square grid, and mapping them in place very carefully. He did this, as I said, very laborious work, not only measuring where they occurred, but also their orientation and their states of articulation. And he found 180 specimens in a space of what is it? I can check and see. 2 by 5 square meters, 2 by 5 meters. So this is really crowded conditions, and probably represents a life assemblage. Part of his study also was studying similar occurrences in the Florida Bay. So we went down, rather in the Gulf Coast. So we went down near Apalachicola and mapped them in place down there. And he has presented results now at a national meeting where he gave a professional quality poster, and most recently at a sectional meeting where he gave a talk, which is rather unusual for an undergraduate to give a talk here, both of which were very well received, and he's currently finishing his honors thesis. His work will be reported in the literature. It certainly is important enough. I left out an important part of it, and that is one of the things we were trying to measure is whether these occur in grass beds, because such dense accumulations occur in grass beds today. And grass beds are just getting started at this time in the geologic history, so it's possible. But what Josh found by this combination of ancient and modern study was that the diversity of mollusks is not nearly high enough, most likely, to be a grass bed. So he was able to probably rule out that grass bed hypothesis. And it occurred to him that perhaps they are so dense because instead of grass beds baffling the currents and creating a calm environment, the shells themselves are baffling the currents and creating having the same effect. So this will be a paper, as I was about to say, a paper probably in the Journal of Paleontology or in the Journal Palaios. So we're very proud and happy to present this medal to Josh today.